Hello everyone, glad to be back. Today is 3rd of June, now it's 20 past 11 in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update today, in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. There are quite a few very significant developments that you may find interesting. And I will start with India today. Russian media outlets and media all around the world, I guess, are reporting about this tragic event that took place on a railway in India, where two passenger trains and one cargo train collided, and as a result of this tragic event, according to latest data that Russian media is reporting, 288 people died, and about 900 people, passengers of those trains, are injured. So very tragic event. My condolences to Indian people, to India. Unfortunately, even though railways are quite safe transport, unfortunately this kind of events do happen, and yes, it's tragic, it's shocking, really. So many lives have been lost, and so many people are injured as a result of this tragedy. I guess this devastating event will be one of the major news in media all around the world today. Let's continue with some other news, and next information is about statements that Vladimir Rogov, official from Zaporozhye region, made, and his statements are reported by RIA Novosti news agency, according to which Zelensky's regime did form strike force, quite a large strike force in Zaporozhye direction, and they are now ready to conduct offensive or counteroffensive operations. This is a statement from Vladimir Rogov. Probably he does know much more information from inside sources, and I guess we have no reason to not believe to this statement. Let me show you on the map this area. It's not surprising, really, not surprising, because everyone, me included, were talking about for quite a long time now that these offensive operations that have been demanded by West from Zelensky's regime will take place in direction of Azov Sea, to cut this land bridge between Crimea and mainland Russia. And according to Rogov, here in Zaporozhye region, it's quite strong and large strike force have been accumulated by Zelensky's regime, and in coming days, coming weeks, we will probably see beginning of this offensive operations from Zelensky's regime. A few minutes ago I did share on my Telegram channel this information from Zelensky himself. He did give an interview to Wall Street Journal, and he said that they are ready to start counteroffensive. I guess pressure on Zelensky and his associates are so high from Western masters of theirs that they have no other choice other than give order to their last reserves that are concentrated in Zaporozhye, Dnipropetrovsk and Kherson regions to get ready to start counteroffensive operations, even if they are absolutely sure that this will be suicidal mission, because it will be suicidal operation for Ukrainian armed forces and for Zelensky's regime itself. So let's see how will situation develop, but as I understand, Zelensky's regime don't really have much room time-wise anymore, and Washington and London will eventually force him to start these offensive operations. And when it begins, we will see strong activization of Ukrainian forces in Kherson region. They will definitely try to cross the Dnieper River all the way in Kherson region, and main forces of Zelensky's regime will try to, in this direction, in Kherson direction, will try, in my reading of big picture, to establish control over the Novaya Kakhovka city here, small town, and Kakhovka Dam here, because this is only way now at this moment to transfer heavy military equipment from right bank of the Dnieper and this Kakhovka water reservoir to the left bank in Kherson region. Same time, of course, we will probably see some amphibious operations of Zelensky's regime in direction of Energodar city and Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, which is basically located right next to Energodar. This is Zaporozhye nuclear power plant here, and that's Energodar. And simultaneously, I guess we will see offensive operations of Zelensky's regime from Orekhova and Gulyai-Pole directions, and Ukrainian forces will probably try to establish control or attack at least Pologi here and Tokmak. Tokmak is very important city at this point because it's, as I understand, it's one of the main logistical hubs of Russian armed forces in this direction. So I guess one of the major directions of Ukrainian forces will be Tokmak, and then of course they will try to move in direction of Melitopol and Berdyansk, but maybe even Mariupol, but they don't really have enough manpower to do so. They may have some local scale success in first hours and first days. As I said before, they may move forward for a couple of kilometers, and that's it. And that's it. Russian defense lines will stop this offensive movement of Ukrainian brigades, and then once Ukrainian forces will run out of steam, Russian side will begin its offensive operations. Russian frontline aviation will probably become extremely active. And if you take a look on the area of Zaporozhye region on the map, it's basically open terrain. It's not much places to hide really. So when Ukrainian forces will be on the move, they will become just easy prey for Russian aviation and Russian missile and artillery strikes. So as I said many times before, Zelensky's regime have no means to conduct large-scale offensive operation because they lack manpower, they lack ammunition and military weaponry, but they have enough reserves, last reserves, about 70,000-80,000 strong, about 15-20 brigades that are more or less capable of conducting some operations, and once they will start these local scale offensives, basically it will be beginning of the end, not just Ukrainian armed forces as a more or less capable entity, but also it will be beginning of the end of Zelensky's regime, because once Russian side will decimate these last Ukrainian reserves, I guess Ukrainian armed forces will start to collapse all along the front line. Morale in Ukrainian army already are at lowest point, and once Russian side will deal with these last reserves of Zelensky's regime, then it will be too obvious, and it is too obvious right now, that Ukrainian armed forces will begin to collapse. And at that stage, at that point, I guess we will see activization of Poland, and some other NATO member states that are neighboring Ukraine, because my prediction is that when Ukrainian armed forces will start to collapse, these NATO member states will intervene, and they will at least try to establish control over the western parts of Ukraine and establish no-fly zone over the western Ukraine. I don't think leadership of Poland or Romania are looking for direct clashes with Russian army, with Russian military, and therefore I don't think they will move eastwards. They will just probably establish control over the western parts of Ukraine and stay there. But if Warsaw and some other capital will make a fatal mistake and they will move eastwards, then we will end up in a direct confrontation between Russia and a few NATO member states, especially Poland. Let's hope it will not go down this way, and Polish troops and Romanian forces will stay only in the western parts, on the territories that before Second World War were part of Poland and Romania. But at this stage, nothing can be ruled out, really. So let me continue now. So I did share with you statements from Rogov that Zelensky's regime is more or less ready now to conduct offensive operations, and Zelensky himself, as I said, stated exactly the same in interview with Wall Street Journal. So in coming days, we will probably see beginning of the end of Zelensky's regime and Ukrainian armed forces as a more or less capable entity. And by this I mean beginning of this counteroffensive. Next information is also from Rogov, Vladimir Rogov, official of Zaporozhye region, and he did comment on yesterday's strikes on Berdyansk by Zelensky's regime, and according to him, Ukrainian forces launched a few missiles. There are some reports that it was Storm Shadow missiles in direction of Berdyansk, in direction of port in that city, and I did share on my Telegram channel video and photo material about these strikes. And according to Rogov, Russian air defense systems did manage to shut down a few missiles, but some missiles did go through and they did explode on territory of port in Berdyansk. In Berdyansk, there are no information about casualties on the ground, at least from these statements from Rogov, but some other sources did said that few people were wounded, but no one was killed during these strikes, and missiles themselves that got through Russian air defense systems hit building work area. So maybe Russian electronic warfare systems somehow intervene and distract those missiles, because they hit just areas that has no strategic meaning or military meaning. And that's why I was surprised when I see these videos. I was thinking what they were aiming for, because it does not make sense. But yet again, if Russian electronic warfare systems did intervene, then it's quite understandable that missiles just lost direction and hit not exactly in the place that they were aimed for. Let me continue now, and this is RIA Novosti's report from head of Belgorod region, Vyacheslav Gladkov, who did comment on situation on Belgorod and in Belgorod region and in Shebekino direction. According to him, shellings from Ukrainian side are still happening, but in much less intensity, because Russian side was very active to deal with the Ukrainian armed forces that were conducting these shelling operations, the strikes on Shebekino, but still because area of Kharkov region that are bordering Belgorod region is quite wide. Of course, it's gonna be difficult to stop any shelling from Ukrainian side as long as these areas are not under control of Russian forces, these bordering areas. And to be honest, as long as Kharkov region is not under full Russian control, I guess it's even theoretically impossible to secure borderline 100%. And I'm quite sure at one point Kharkov region will be under Russian control, but it will not happen today and tomorrow in months or 2 months time. It will take quite long period to achieve this. So at least Ukrainian shellings are not so intense, which is at this stage we can assume as some kind of good development in comparison to previous days when Zelensky's regime was heavily shelling borderline settlements, especially Shebekino, and I did share video footage of burning buildings and destroyed civilian apartments as a result of those shellings. Let me continue now, and this is quite disturbing information from Ukraine. TASS news agency is reporting that one of the high-ranking official of Zelensky's regime, Alexei Danilov, who is the chairman of Security Council of Ukraine, did stated that Russian speaker people have no place in Ukraine. And he is openly saying this, that Russian speakers have no place in Ukraine. And he said that because one of the members of Ukrainian parliament refused to stop talking in Russian. And as a response, Danilov, this war criminal and mass murderer, who is a high-ranking official, one of the highest-ranking official in Ukraine, chairman of Security Council, or secretary of Security Council. He said that Russian speakers have no place in Ukraine. So you tell me, what is this? Is it not fascism and Nazism? And is not a crime, these kind of statements? But by the way, Western elites will, and Western media will, of course, ignore this kind of factual evidence that Zelensky's regime is a totally criminal, totally Nazi and fascist regime. They will ignore this, or they will try to find reasoning and justification for this kind of criminal statements and criminal actions from Zelensky's regime. That's quite unfortunate that there is probably not a single media outlet in the West which will articulate exactly this topic that I just said. Not even one. And that's quite unfortunate, isn't it? Because 10-15 years ago, they still at least few newspapers and magazines that were able or capable to write true, to publish factual information, but not anymore. If you want to hear or see true, now you have to looking for it in internet, on independent channels, on YouTube, Rumble, Telegram, just anywhere, from citizen journalists or from journalists, professional journalists that are moving into internet space, because media outlets, well-known media outlets, are not really about journalism no more. Let me continue, and this is quite interesting development. TASS news agency is reporting the head of Ministry of Defense of Indonesia come up with a peace proposal during the conference in Indonesia, Shangri-La Dialogue, and he said that under his peace proposal, first step should be ceasefire. First step should be ceasefire, and then both sides, all sides, should move its military forces 15 kilometers distance from a current contact line between the sides, and then some demilitarized zone should be created, and UN peacekeepers should be deployed on that in that demilitarized zone. Well, when I read this news, it did, to me at least, resembled many other almost similar peace proposals that did work in some places during the last 50 to 70 years, and there was many conflicts all around the world. But unfortunately, I don't think this peace plan will have any chance to succeed, because, as I said many times before, as long as Washington and London are not willing to talk about peace, there will be no peace in Ukraine. It's just technically impossible. But it's, of course, good that more and more countries are coming up with peace plans, roadmaps to peace, and other initiatives. It's all noble steps from these countries, but yet again, as long as the US and UK's elites are not willing to compromise, as long as they are pouring in money and weapons in this conflict, we will see no peace there. And by the way, one more very important point is, can Russian side trust Zelensky's regime? I don't think so. To be honest, at this stage, I guess Russian side will refuse this kind of peace plan, because Zelensky's regime cannot be trusted. No way. So I guess Russian side will try to achieve a decisive victory on the battlefield and establish peace on its terms. Western elites won't prolong this conflict. Okay, Russian side will deal with it and will emerge victorious from this conflict, and it's too obvious already, isn't it? Western elites lost this battle with Russia, and it's not only a matter of formalization now of this Russian victory. Yes, it will not be easy. It will take a huge amount of resources, but eventually Russia will emerge victorious, and it's already too clear, really, at least for me. So I don't think why Russian side should accept any peace plan which will allow Zelensky's regime and current extremely Russophobic and inadequate quasi-state or failed state as a modern Ukraine to exist. Why should Moscow allow this to happen? You tell me, you know. But anyway, as I said, it's good that more and more countries are coming up with peaceful initiatives, but yet again, I'm afraid it's too late now, and Russia will move towards decisive victory. It's because it's on horizon right now. Let me continue, and this is Interfax News Agency's report about first wave of mobilization in Russia that did take place a little more than half a year ago. And according to Interfax, 280 military units were created by 300,000 mobilized reservists, which is quite significant number. And I guess this mobilized personnel did already play some significant role on the front line. And even though majority of reservists still in reserves, they are not on the front line, I guess decision was correct, and that first wave of mobilization did give Russian armed forces opportunity to not just reinforce frontline units, but also conduct how you say, I forget the word, man. Rotation, yes, that's it. To conduct rotation so that one unit is not staying on the front line too long, so that soldiers and officers will have time to rest, and units will have opportunity to reinforce and receive additional ammunition and weaponry. So I guess first wave of mobilization, despite all difficulties, especially on the first stages, I guess first wave of mobilization was successful. And you know my take on this topic. I think in coming weeks, in near future, we will see second wave of mobilization, because I think it's probably necessary, because Russia has enough forces to conduct combat operations on the front line, but Russia do needs more, in my opinion, more military units, let's say mobilized personnel, to control territories that have been liberated, to make sure that there are no sabotage groups are able to freely operate in that areas. And we are talking about vast areas. Ukraine is one of the biggest countries in Europe. So that's why, in my understanding, it's necessary to conduct one more wave of mobilization. And in my opinion, at least 500,000 reservists, maybe even myself, because I am reservist also, will be mobilized, or possibly even more. But yet again, this is first time I'm seeing this kind of data, that 280 military units were formed from mobilized personnel. Let me continue now, and TASS News Agency's report about statement of Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister of UK, who said that British militaries did begin to will begin to train Ukrainian pilots on different varieties of Western fighter jets. We have no specific data here. UK don't have F-16s, but maybe on its inventory. But maybe some UK pilots do have experience how to fly F-16s, and maybe they will train Ukrainian pilots to operate with that fighter jets. UK has Typhoons, Eurofighters in its inventory, and F-35 5th-gen fighter jets at this moment. And to be honest, I don't believe that Zelensky's regime will ever receive any Western fighter jets, because in my opinion, when there is not enough time to to train not just pilots but also personnel that will maintain these planes. So whenever we will see introduction of Western fighter jets on the battlefield, of course it will be piloted and maintained by NATO military personnel. It's just too obvious. And these kind of statements, I see these kind of statements as a kind of smokescreen for, attempt to have on their hands plausible deniability once Western fighter jets will be introduced to the battle. But yet again, I think we will see F-16s, Eurofighters, maybe even F-35s, or French Rafales or Mirage 2000s, maybe Swedish Saabs, Gripens. We will see these planes being introduced to battlefield only when Poland and some other NATO member states will openly enter this conflict and will try with exactly these fighter jets to establish a no-fly zone over the western parts of Ukraine. And that's why I'm saying these planes will be operated by NATO military, and Zelensky's regime will have no control over even single Western fighter jet. They may say that it's Ukrainian pilots, but who gonna believe this, man? Nobody. And to be honest, I don't think Poland and Romania or Slovakia will move eastwards. They will probably stay in the western parts of Ukraine, so that we will probably don't see direct clashes on the ground or on the air between Russian and NATO soldiers, even though some accidents, some local scale accidents may take place, but not huge scale direct clashes. Let me continue now, and this is RIA Novosti's report about statements that Putin made during the meeting of Russian Security Council, and he said that non-friendly states are non-friendly towards Russia. States are using all their means to somehow destabilize Russia internally, and Putin during this meeting of Security Council said that it's one of the major priorities for government and security forces to make sure that internal situation in country is stable, and there should be extra attention paid to make sure that no foreign power will be able to create any tensions between the different ethnic groups that are living in Russia, different ethnic or religious groups. And by the way, it's 190 ethnic groups that are living in Russia in peace and prosperity. And Christianity, Islam and Buddhism is traditional religions for Russia. You may don't know, but Kalmykia, for example, is mainly Buddhist republic, and there are many national autonomous republics in Russia where a majority of residents, fate of majority of residents is traditionally Islam, and yes, majority of Russian regions are Christians, but yet again, it's 190 different ethnic groups, which is huge number, isn't it? And Russia, that's why I'm saying that Russia is a great example how state can be multicultural, and how this multiculturalism is strength to the state, not weakness. And Russia is clearly demonstrating it. And yes, of course, government have to be very cautious and very careful, and have to pay attention to make sure that Western secret services will not be able to create any divisions inside the country. But to be honest, I don't believe that Western elites will be able to provoke any internal confrontation. I just don't see it coming, man. No. Society are united, and maybe even more united now than before beginning of special military operations. So at one hand, I clearly understand why Putin and high-ranking Russian officials are paying attention to this topic to make sure the situation is stable in country. They should do this of course. But in second hand, I have faith in Russian society, and I believe society is much united and stronger now than before beginning of special military operation and before this sanction war that Western elites declare on Russia. Let me continue now, and this is TASS News Agency's report. Yet again about UK, United Kingdom, and Defense Minister of UK. This quite strange individual, Ben Wallace, made statements that it's Russia forced NATO to expand. I mean, sometimes you want to, take these Western elites a little bit seriously, because after all they are high-ranking officials like this Ben Wallace, but it's truly difficult, man. It's truly difficult to take these creatures seriously. So NATO is expanding because of Russia? Really? How come? But any nonsense now can be said by Western elites, and it seems like they have no opposition there. No one is challenging them. But anyway, and by the way, one may say that after beginning of special military operation, Finland did join NATO. Sweden will become probably sometime in the future member of NATO. This was caused by Russian actions, but to be honest, I did say about this topic many times before, Russia don't really cares about Finland and Sweden joining NATO, because these countries are anyway integrated in the anti-Russian coalition. They are part of anti-Russian coalition anyway, and does it mean anything if they are officially part of anti-Russian alliance or not? Factually, de facto they are. And that's why Moscow's reaction was quite calm, because, as I said, we see these countries as a part of anti-Russian alliance anyway. So who cares if they are in NATO or formally outside of that organization? No one cares, really. So, But yet again, as you can see, man, one day we may end up in a situation when Western elites, even for rain or snow or wind, will start blaming Russia. That's how crazy, how mad they are, They can blame for Russia anything, If electricity is cut off somewhere, oh, it's Russia, though. If it's extremely sunny day, it's because of Russia, man. That's Russia. If it rains, then of course it's Russia. Yes, you can blame Russia for everything nowadays, especially when it comes to Western elites. That's what they are doing, though. And it feels funny, it looks funny, but it's not really, because these Western elites are ruling tens of states in the West, and they are deciding fate of for millions and millions, for tens of millions of people. And when you think that way, it becomes scary. It's not funny no more. Okay, let me continue. This is RIA Novosti's report. Once again, head of Pentagon is crying. Austin. Lloyd Austin is crying that Chinese are not answering his phone calls. Well, probably Chinese don't have any respect towards Austin or current leadership of USA. Maybe that's the reason. And according to this information, Washington wants to have some negotiations with China, or to, you know, on topics of control of weapons, especially offensive strategic weapons, and China don't want anything to do with this, because I mean, can they trust current administration in the US? Even citizens of US don't trust this administration. How Chinese can trust Washington, or how anybody can trust Washington in this world? You know, but probably we are seeing we are not seeing this kind of development very often, when one state is basically ignoring US elites. China can, Russia can, maybe a few more countries also in this world, and that's it. And this is gonna be last news for today's update. Russian oil giant's profits soar despite these sanctions from the West, and of course we are talking about Rosneft, Russian company, and according to Russia Today, RT, profits at Russia's largest oil producer Rosneft jumped by 45.5% in the first quarter of this year compared to previous 3 months, hitting 323 billion rubles, which is about $4 billion. Well, demand on Russian crude oil and on Russian resources basically is quite high in the world, and I don't know why Western elites did think that they can cut off Russia entirely from the world. I cannot understand the logic behind this kind of thinking of the Western elites, but we have factual information here, according to which, despite these sanctions and some difficulties that Russian economy definitely have to deal with, Russian businesses managing to gain some significant profits and establish themselves on new markets, and it's all good. And Russian economy in general is doing quite well, really, quite well. When you think that Russia is under about 10,000 sanctions or 11,000 sanctions, and when you see life in Russia, you will be surprised, really. You know. So yes, it's all good. Russian economy is doing quite well. Russian energo sector, despite some difficulties, are profiting, which is good because they will pay taxes, and federal budget will have enough funds to finance social programs. So yes, I wanted to share this information as just one more example that Western sanctions, even though they are creating some difficulties for Russia, but they are not as effective as Western elites would like, which is great for us and for the world, by the way. So this is it for now. I hope you will find this video interesting, and if so, please hit that like button, leave some commentary about any topic you like. It's very important, because more likes and comments, my videos will have more chances are that algorithm don't suppress it too much. And if you can, please share links to my videos or my channel with your friends on Telegram, Facebook, Twitter, or any other platform that you are active on. This way maybe I will have a chance to reach wider audience. And if you think this channel is interesting, informative, and deserve deserves to exist. Please consider to support with small donations through PayPal, buy me coffee, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. You will see links under this video in the description box. This is it for now. I wish you a great weekend and take care.